Hello everyone and welcome to this, the very first video of a brand new channel I've set up all about video games, and it's so new in fact, this channel, that at this point in time I don't actually have a name for it. I'm sure I'll think of something pretty soon, but in the meantime let's focus on Sony's decision to end support for the PlayStation Network for the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Portable and the PlayStation Vita, which is something that's been met with some anger from a degree of people out there, for obvious reasons really. From our point of view, there's nothing really that good about this decision. There's nothing really to be gained, there's nothing, from our point of view, there's nothing good about it at all really. But and it is something that's it's gonna lead to piracy to a degree, I'd imagine. People are gonna, when you restrict anything really that people have access to, they're going to look for alternate ways, and they're going to often look for illegal ways and that sort of thing. So piracy is going to be somewhat inevitable to some degree as a result of this decision. But looking at this from Sony's point of view, this is a service that they've been supporting now for many years. When you think that the PS5 is currently out, you can't actually go to a shop and buy one, but apparently at least it seems to be out. So for the whole life really of the PS4, to some degree at least, the majority of the PS4's life, the PS3, if you think about it, has been supported, with this online service. And I think part of the reason why this network has been supported for as long as it has and hasn't been taken down much sooner is probably because of the Vita. The Vita's only just recently been kind of dropped, not that long ago, from Sony. They decided to drop that. So it's effectively a network which is being supported for 3 consoles, effectively, that in some cases Sony haven't supported or manufactured in many years now. You look at something like the PS3 and the PSP in particular, they've been out of production for years now, so there's not really many reasons for them to keep it going, especially as I'd imagine there's some games on there, quite a few. There's thousands and thousands of games in total, in different regions all over the world, and I imagine some of these games are gonna get the renewal of the license and that kind of thing is probably due for a lot of them, and they're probably thinking, what's the point of paying for it? It's not really that viable to do with these 3 systems that they don't even make anymore. They aren't even supported or anything like that much. In certain cases games have stopped being made for them quite a number of years ago, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of inevitable really, and I don't think it's necessarily such a terrible thing. There's quite a few videos such as this one talking about it and going through some of the games you should maybe pick up before they go away. But it's important to remember as well that just because these games are going from this network, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be wiped off the face of the earth and you're never going to be able to play them again ever again, at a reasonable price. I'm sure some of them will find other homes elsewhere, in other services and other online services and that kind of thing. So it's not like they're going to disappear. But having said that, there will be, I imagine, some games, don't know how many, of course only time will tell, that will fall between the cracks sort of thing, and you won't be able to play them for maybe who knows how long, so that's something else still kind of worth thinking about. I find it hard to imagine that every single one of these games will find a home elsewhere and you'll be able to play them. I imagine that a lot of them, potentially at least, might become potentially very, very difficult to get your hands on, even more so than now, and there's not many options for them as it is. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out, and it could be a case where some of these games are just very difficult to get your hands on. So let's talk about some of the games that are available on the on the PlayStation Network as it is now, and I want to start with some games on the UK network. And to put this into some degree of context for people who aren't aware, the UK network, by comparison to say the American network, the US network, is pretty crap really. It's nowhere near as good. But comparing this to the Japanese network, it's pretty much absolute garbage. The Japanese network has considerably more choice on it. I was looking at it recently, and I believe there's something like 750, around there anyway, just PlayStation 1 games. Yeah, 750. You compare that to the UK, we haven't got, nowhere near that amount. So yeah, it's not, the UK one isn't great by any stretch of the imagination, but there is some gems on it. And if you got a UK network, PlayStation network, I'd recommend checking these ones out first and foremost before you think about going to other regions or whatever. Check these out first, because they are all up, I believe. I don't believe any of them have been taken down as of yet. I hope not anyway. So let's begin with a couple of games on the PlayStation 1 that's on the PlayStation Network, and it's Silent Hill. I'm going to start with Silent Hill. I've got a list to the side of me in case you're wondering what I'm looking at. Silent Hill is it's a game I imagine most people who have grew up with the PlayStation and that kind of thing, been interested in the PlayStation, probably already played. But if you haven't already played it, or you're someone who played it maybe when it first came out and haven't played it since, this is a great chance to revisit it. It is a really damn good game. It's one of my favourite games of all time. It's I'd say one of the best games on the entire PlayStation. Well worth playing and maybe playing through again. And also as well, one thing that's worth thinking about when it comes to Silent Hill is that when it comes to playing this game legitimately, outside of piracy and all that, you've got the original copy on disc for the PlayStation, and copies for that on eBay around the £30 mark. So it's not super expensive or anything like that, but it's not cheap either. It's much cheaper on the current the PlayStation Network as there is now. So you got the network, you've got the disc, and that's kind of it for Silent Hill. When the network gets taken down, you're just gonna have the disc. That's the only legitimate way of buying the game, which is a real kind of tragedy in a way. There's it's such a great game. It's such a classic. It's such a popular game as well. It's not like it's obscure or anything like that. And the only way you're going to be able to play it is to find an old copy on eBay. It's a bit of a shame, really. There's no other options out there. It wasn't included in the HD remaster or anything like that. So, yeah, this is a golden opportunity to pick her up on the cheap. But this is Konami we're talking about, so there is going to be a but to it, and the but to getting hold of this downloadable version is that there is a bug on the game. Unfortunately, it's not on the original disc version, it's only on this downloadable version, and it's something that Konami never bothered to fix, unfortunately. And it's a bug that's kind of unusual. It occurs randomly, or potentially randomly, during any point in the game, as far as I'm aware. It happened to me during a boss fight, and it's a very annoying ringing sound. You can't really miss it. It kind of overpowers all the other sound that appears in the game. And it happened to me during the boss battle, and at first I thought it was part of the game. So I looked into it, and I looked at some forums, and it's been affecting other people. It's been affecting other people quite badly as well. They've been it's completely ruined their experience of the game. They've had to reinstall it now. I haven't got rid of it, and I've had to delete save files, which is never a fun thing to do because of a bug. So yeah, it's potentially a problem. But there's been people out there that have had no effect on them whatsoever. For me, it happened during a boss fight. I switched the game off, I turned it on again, and I had no issue from that point onwards. But hearing stories about people badly affected by it, I think it's worth mentioning that it does have an issue, and it's a shame that Konami never bothered to fix it, but then again, I'm not entirely surprised that they didn't. So move on from Silent Hill and on to Resident Evil. You got the three original games in their original form currently available, and these are worth checking out if you're curious, if you've never played them before. And just like Silent Hill to a degree, these games are kind of, in this original form, they're quite tricky to get your hands on these days. There's this version on the network that's soon to be gone, of course. There's original copies, and that's kind of it, really. You can play the remakes and that kind of thing. They're really readily available on a multiple, different consoles, from the GameCube to the even like the PS4 and that kind of thing. More modern, recent devices. But in terms of in terms of the original game, there's not many ways you can play it, so yeah, worth checking out while you can if you're curious. So moving on from Resident Evil and Silent Hill, we've got a game on the PS2. It's a Gungrave Overdose, which is a budget game, and it looks like a bit of fun. I haven't played it, but it does look fun, and it's pretty cheap as well. And it's something that's definitely maybe worth checking out if you're interested. Next, we've got a God Hand, which is, I'm surprised this is still up, to be honest, because this is a bit of a gem. Hard to get hold of an original copy of this at a good price. PS2 game, pretty unique in a way, in terms of it's kind of very over the top and it's a fighting game, and yeah, it looks like good fun. So yeah, worth checking that out while you can, and you probably won't be able to find a cheap copy on the PS2 really, unless you're very lucky. So this is well worth picking up. Next we got Neo Contra. It's a PS2 Contra game. I haven't played this, but it looks pretty fun. It looks better than the more recent Contra game that we got, which looks pretty crap. So yeah, this is worth checking out, and it would be cheaper than picking up an original physical copy. This is going to be the case for a lot of these. Gradius 5, shoot 'em up game, space shooter, famous game series, PS2 game, and it's again a lot cheaper to pick up this copy on the network than it is on the physical disc if you look on eBay and that kind of thing. Future Cop is the next game, PS1 game, and yeah, this is a lot of fun. It's a good solid fun game, similar to Desert Strike. It's made by the same makers of Desert Strike and Urban Strike and Nuclear Strike and all those sorts of games, and this is a bit different. You play as like an Ed 209 robot, from RoboCop, going around just blasting people and blowing things up, and it's pretty good fun, and it's somewhat pricey. I saw a copy in a game shop for about £25, so for a PS1 game that's pretty pricey, considering a lot of them are very, very cheap. So yeah, £25 is it's a fairly collectible game, quite a game that's in quite high demand. People want to play it because it's quite good, and I don't think it sold great when it first came out, so yeah, worth checking out. Next we got Vib Ribbon, which is a rhythm game, and the great thing about this is you can add your own CD, any sort of audio CD, and it turns it into a rhythm game. It's a little bit gimmicky. The graphics are very basic on it because I think it uses the internal memory of the PlayStation, which is very limited. But yeah, it's good fun, and it's something a bit different, and I believe original copies are very pricey. Next we got a Crisis Beat, which is a beat 'em up game set on a cruise liner. It's an arcade game made in Japan, and it was only released in Japan and Europe. It never came out in America, so it's somewhat obscure. It's not great or anything like that, but it's a bit of fun, and it's not rare or expensive, but it's going to be a bit cheaper than on eBay and that sort of thing. Next we've got the only PS3 game I'm going to be talking about. It's House of the Dead 4, and if you've got some Move controllers lying around I haven't used in a while, and you like House of the Dead, this is something you really need to consider picking up, because it's a lot of fun. If you like the House of the Dead games, you've played the earlier ones, this is well worth checking out, and it's a bit of a gem on the network. Not very expensive or anything like that. A lot of fun, and it was only ever released on the PlayStation Network. It was never given a physical copy, and I believe it was the only way of playing it besides the arcade. So unless you find an arcade cabinet of this, which is very, very unlikely, you're not really going to be able to play it. So this is something that's well worth checking out. It's something that's due for a re-release or something, as far as I'm concerned, but at this meantime, it's going to be taken down, and it's going to be very difficult to play legitimately, or next to impossible, should I say, to play legitimately. So that's kind of it for the UK games. There is some gems in there. There's more stuff as well. There's stuff like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, and there's Metal Gear Solid, and there's still some good stuff on there. But I just went through these games that I'd highly, highly recommend, because there's not many options in terms of playing them outside of the network, legitimately at least. So they're well worth checking out, and there's going to be more. It's well worth looking for yourself as well while you can, while it's still available. But they're the ones I would highly recommend you at least consider picking up. Now moving on now to picking up games from different regions, and I know this is something that people have been doing for years now. I've only recently started doing it because the network's being taken down, and it's something it's possible and it's definitely doable, but it's something that's kind of time consuming as well, and it's a little bit annoying. So you've got to kind of ask yourself whether you want to kind of go through it, whether it's worth your while and that sort of thing. For me it was. I got a fairly decent amount of games from these other networks, and I'll leave some links to some videos guiding you through the process, which you're going to need, especially if you're going down the Japanese route and trying to pick up games from that network, because when you select Japanese as your, Japan should I say, as your region, all the menus and everything go into Japanese. So unless you speak Japanese, you're not really going to know what you're doing, and it's going to be very, very difficult. So you're going to need a guide to guide you through all that, and I'll try to leave as many links to these videos as I can to kind of guide you through it. But I'd recommend first and foremost setting up an American account, and unless there's a game on the Japanese network that you're interested in and nothing on the American one, and it's unavailable. It's unavailable. It's only available on the Japanese market. It's unavailable elsewhere. Then obviously you need to set up a Japanese account. But if there's games on the American one and the Japanese one that you're interested in, I'd go first and foremost for the American one. And there's two main reasons for that. First of all, it's much easier to set up an account. It's much easier to navigate through the store because it's in English. And that's going to be a lot easier. And the games as well are going to be the American versions, which means they're going to be in the English language. You're not going to get text popping up on the screen that you can't read, and that sort of thing. And they're going to be easier to play, easier to follow the stories, and so on and so forth. So yeah, go for the American network over the Japanese first and foremost. Get what you can from that. And then maybe go to the Japanese market if there's a few extra games that you want to pick up that you've got no other option. Only go for the Japanese market when you've got no other option, effectively. So let's take a look at some American games on the American network currently. I'd recommend you pick up. And first you've got Klonoa, which sounds a bit like a disease, to me, but it's a game where I haven't played it, but you play as like a cat, I believe. Platform game. It looks like fun, a bit Nintendo-esque. It's like a Nintendo-esque sort of PlayStation game, PS1. Looks like good fun. Apparently it's incredibly collectible, a physical copy, so that's worth checking out. Sonic Wings is another game that's worth checking out. It's a shooter game, and yeah, I haven't played it, but it looks like fun if you like your shooter games. And there's quite a few on this list that I'm going to be recommended. So yeah, that's worth checking out if you're interested in it. Next you've got Contra, Shattered Soldier. On the American market you've got Shattered Soldier and Neo Contra. You've got both versions. In the UK we've only got Neo Contra, but in America they got both. They're both PS2 games, worth checking out, good fun. I believe Shattered Soldier is even better than Neo Contra, so they've got maybe the better choices in America. Castlevania Chronicles. This game is a remake of the original Castlevania, which is right up my street. I love Castlevania, and I looked on eBay and I saw copies for like £400 for original PlayStation 1, for the original PlayStation 1 console. So yeah, this is something that you kind of want to check out pretty soon if you're into Castlevania, because chances are you're not going to be able to play it for quite a while. It's a shame it wasn't included in any the Castlevania collections, that are recently out, they're available on recent, I got that on the Switch. So we'll move on from Castlevania Chronicles and on to Gear Seed, which is a shooter game. Apparently this is highly collectible, in terms of original copies, hundreds and hundreds of pounds, so this is a great way of picking it up. Next we got this game called Shinryu, Shinryu, which is a shooter game. Obviously it's Japanese, and this is looks like a lot of fun. A lot of these games I haven't played. I sort of downloaded them while I could, and I'm going to play them in the future, but yeah, they do look pretty good, and definitely a lot cheaper than you'd find an original copy. Next we got Dino Crisis. I've actually got it's Dino Crisis 1 and Dino Crisis 2 is available on the American networks, not on the UK, unfortunately. I picked up physical copies last year, and they're not too expensive, but much cheaper to pick them up on the store. And I haven't played them. I've owned them for about a year now, and I haven't got around to playing them. So yeah, that's on my to play list, definitely. Both Dino Crisis games. Next we have Fatal Frame, which is a PlayStation 2 game. I've got this. It's Project Zero on the original Xbox, essentially the Xbox version of it. And they changed the name to Project Zero in the UK. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was right reasons or whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play this, and if I like it enough, I'm going to play get hold of the second and third game, because it's got the trilogy on the PlayStation Network. But I'm going to play this, the first one, and if I enjoy this enough, if I go enough out of it, I'll try and get my hands on those two other sequels. But they come kind of recommended if you're into survival horror. It does look up my street. This, it looks pretty spooky on the back. So yeah, I'll check that out, when I can. So that's kind of it for the American games. I don't want this video to be too long. There's obviously other good stuff on there that's worth checking out, but these are the ones I would highly recommend you search out first and foremost if you're interested in them. And so we'll move on now to the Japanese accounts, and there's only one game on the Japanese account now I've opened up that I recommend, and that is the game Haunting Ground, which is a Capcom survival horror game. I love survival horror games. You kind of tell I like these things, and it's a game that's pretty pricey to find an original copy. It was released in you can get a UK European copies, but they're like £100 plus and that sort of thing. For a PS2 game, it's not going to happen, or for any game, in fact, it's not going to happen. So yeah, I opened up a Japanese account just for this. The only thing is with it, it's got Japanese text in it and that sort of thing, so I'm going to need a bit of a guide to help guide me through it and to follow the story and to kind of just translate some of the Japanese text. And that's the downfall of opening up a Japanese account and buying Japanese games. You can't change the language. When you press start on the controller, you get all these, all the button commands, what they mean, and it's all in Japanese. So it's not easy to play. So I'm gonna have to pour a bit of time to one side and get a guide and hopefully help translate it without getting spoilers and things like that. This is the downside of getting games from Japan, unfortunately. But if it's the only way you can get it on on the cheap or somewhat cheap, it's worth doing. And I didn't pay that much for it really. So yeah, there's tons of games on the Japanese network. It's almost too much in a way. You can kind of get swamped by it. So that's kind of it really, I suppose, for this video. There is just one thing I want to say though about opening up a network from a different country. You do have to jump through hoops to gain access to them. It isn't, and it's fairly straightforward and everything like that, but it is time consuming. It's not something you're going to be able to do in about 2 minutes flat. You do have to set up like an email address, first and foremost a unique email address that you haven't got with any other account, of course, because otherwise it won't work. You need to set up a fake address, an American fake address with a zip code and all that kind of stuff. Tell them what state you're from, and the same sort of deal with Japan, but you're going to be doing it with Japanese text. And when you search for a game in the Japanese store, you're going to have to do it in Japanese text again, which isn't going to be easy, of course. I certainly struggled with it, matching up the symbols and that, and I even managed to get it pretty close. I was searching for Haunting Ground, so I had to go on Google, what's Japanese for Haunting Ground, and then I realised it's called something else in Japan, so I had to find a translation for that. And then I matched up all the symbols as best I could, and it still wouldn't pop up, so I just went into a PS2 subcategory, which they've actually got on the Japanese network, thankfully, and I was able to find it just scrolling through everything. So it's not easy. You've got to put a bit of time and thought into it, and it is time consuming, but it can be worth it. You can make huge savings, so only you can know whether or not it's something that's worth your time and your money and your effort to go through all this. For me it was, and I got a few gems on there, and I'm kind of happy with what I've got at the moment in time. I might try and get Fatal Frame. maybe interested in getting Resident Evil 2, the original version, which I haven't really played in all honesty. I played the remake, but I could do with playing the original version, and that's kind of it. I'm kind of happy really though with what I've got. So I'll leave some links, as I said. Hopefully you found this video at least somewhat interesting and somewhat helpful. And yeah, any comments or anything like that, any questions or queries or anything like that, I'll be interested to hear. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.